Before I start the video, I want to show you guys another thing that illustrates how bad the women's evolution looks now. You see, as I was scrolling through Twitter, I saw two graphics made by Who is Vindictive that show the Raw and SmackDown Women's Champions in chronological order. I will put them on screen now so you guys can see them. These graphics showed another problem with the women's division, and that is the lack of diversity of champions at that time. You see, when you look at the Raw Women's Championship, you see how the belt was literally just going between Sasha and Charlotte for a good little while. Like, were there no other women on the roster that could have held the title? Thanks to this graphic, we know that WWE seems to agree with that logic. Thank you to @whoisvindictive on Twitter for letting me use this graphic. Now, time to start this video properly. Asuka is one of the most popular, decorated women's superstars that is not a part of the WWE 4 Horsewomen. Asuka holds the record of 914 consecutive days of being undefeated prior to WrestleMania 34. While in NXT, she defeated everyone on the roster and is the longest reigning NXT Women's Champion at 522 days. 522 days in a single reign. The only woman to even come close to her in a single title reign is Bayley at 520 days as SmackDown Women's Champion. Kaylee Ray, who was an NXT UK Women's Champion at the time, only beat Asuka in a single run at 649 days as champion by 127 days. Here's the thing about Asuka's reign though. She was never beaten for the title. She relinquished it before she got called up to Raw, which means that Asuka is the only NXT Women's Champion to defend her title against every woman in NXT and never lose it once. Some of her best title defenses against Ember Moon on two separate NXT takeovers, Mickie James at one takeover, and Bayley at her debut takeover in which she won it first. Those are pretty impressive wrestling matches that really showcase Asuka's ability and talent for newcomers, especially as those were considered the best NXT Women's Championship title defenses ever in NXT. Now, after her first loss to Charlotte at WrestleMania 34, Asuka has had this weird journey in the company. For the longest time, she was in weird feuds, tag teams, but she was slowly building up her legacy despite all those weird obstacles that they decided to place on her. She has so many historical accomplishments, like being the first woman to win the Women's Royal Rumble in 2018. She became the first woman to win a women's TLC match to become a one-time SmackDown Women's Champion at the end of 2018 in the main event of that pay-per-view. Asuka would then go on to main event TLC again in 2019 alongside Kairi Sane to take on Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair in the first ever women's tag team TLC match. Asuka won the Money in the Bank in 2020 and even won the Raw Women's Championship, twice in the same year. She is a two-time women's tag team champion. She shares the title of Grand Slam champion with Bayley and Charlotte Flair. Asuka is a great addition to any women's roster she is in and is a phenomenal wrestler. I can't think of one bad match off the top of my head that she has had while in WWE. And you do know what is crazy? WWE apparently has no plans for her currently at all. That is insane to think about. Now, the next enigma on our list in the long list of enigmas is Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey debuted in 2018 shocked the entire industry as she had her breakout match at WrestleMania 34 when she teamed up with Kurt Angle to go against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. She was quickly moved into the title picture shortly after when she started feuding with Nia Jax, who was the Raw Women's Champion at that time. At Money in the Bank in 2018, Nia Jax vs. Ronda Rousey was the co-main event. That match put Ronda Rousey's wrestling on display and was a solid match in my opinion. Right when Ronda Rousey was going to apply the armbar to win, she was attacked by Alexa Bliss, who had won the Money in the Bank earlier in that night. Ronda won by disqualification, but she wasn't crowned champion. A few months later, at SummerSlam 2018, it was Ronda Rousey vs. Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's Championship. After a good showcase for Ronda, she won after applying the armbar to win her first championship. Ronda kept that title from SummerSlam 2018 to WrestleMania 35. Ronda had some of the best wrestling matches with the likes of Bayley, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Nikki Bella, and Natalya. Sasha Banks vs. Ronda Rousey at the Royal Rumble 2019 is one of my favorite all-time matches in history of wrestling. and also my favorite Ronda and Sasha match. Ronda made history as the first ever women's Evolution main eventer, which means she main evented the first ever all women's pay per view Evolution, and she also became 1/3 of the first ever women's main event for WrestleMania at WrestleMania 35. While her title reign was mediocre, she was still a pillar in the women's evolution. I truly believe that if she didn't sign with WWE, we would have waited longer to see the women main eventing WrestleMania and also get the first ever women's pay per view. Now, Sonya Deville is another woman who I consider to be an enigma in the women's evolution, and not in the way that you think. While she has never held a title in the WWE, not even the women's tag team titles, which is like the lowest of the low belt that pretty much it seems like anybody could have, she still managed to make history in a lot of ways. She took part in the first ever Women's Royal Rumble, the first ever Women's Elimination Chamber match, the first ever Women's Tag Team Chamber Elimination, the first ever Tag Team Elimination Chamber match. Oh my god, such a tongue twister. And the first ever Women's Losers Leave WWE match. She has always been a great wrestler and has many breakout performances. Her main contribution is being in WWE's first full-time lesbian wrestler who is frequently put on TV. She has become somewhat of an ambassador for WWE when it comes to the LGBTQ+ community. She is also the first LGBTQ+ wrestler to wrestle in Saudi Arabia, a country known to be homophobic as they have several homophobic laws that punish being gay as death. Now, she has support from the company behind her and has enabled many other LGBTQ+ wrestlers to make it into WWE like Shayna Baszler, Nixon Newell, Jake Atlas, and Tony Storm. While she may not be a title holder, she is still just as important. Her weekly appearances on TV and pay-per-views since she came back in January of 2021 show that. Now, Alexa Bliss is the final enigma during the women's evolution. Like Asuka, she is one of the most popular women right now in professional wrestling that has been successful while not being a part of the four horsewomen of WWE. She is a 5-time women's champion. She won the Raw Women's Championship 3 times and the SmackDown Women's Championship 2 times. She is a Money in the Bank winner like Asuka and has had successful cash-in like Asuka. She also won the first ever Women's Elimination Chamber match where she defended her Raw Women's Championship title at the time. She is a 2-time tag team champion like Asuka. Alexa's character right now is decisive within the fan base, but we can all agree that she is smashing it with what she's been given. She is a top merch seller overall in WWE, and her character doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon, and that's alright for me. Her in-ring work is amazing, and she never disappoints when it comes to wrestling. I always look forward to seeing her whenever she's on TV, and I hope she will be champion again in the future. The crazy thing about her is, like Asuka, WWE seems to have no plans for Alexa Bliss. This just makes me shake my head in disappointment. Now, a lot of you would rather I might disagree because I didn't put Bianca Belair on the list. And the reason why I didn't put Bianca Belair, despite all the things that she's doing right now, is because she wasn't really there during the women's evolution. Like, she wasn't really at the forefront like Alexa Bliss, like Sonya Deville, like Ronda Rousey, like Asuka. Therefore, as much as I would want to put her on the list, I really can't because there really wasn't a lot of things that she was doing until it came to 2019 and 2020. Now that we have the enigmas out of the way, it is time we talk about the